Before I start this video, I just want to say once again, thank you for the support on the recent Invincible videos. I really do love making this kind of content, so seeing that people enjoy it means the world to me. And let's try to get this video to 40 likes. That would be awesome, but if not, that's okay too, I guess. It's not that big of a deal. Anyway, onto the video.
Hey, it's Luna.
Kill that boy! Kill that boy! Kill that boy! Kill that boy! My entire goddamn skeleton, dickhead.
Finally, we got some big hype moments for Invincible Season 3 that actually feel consequential and important, at least more important than what we have been getting. It is action-packed, emotional, very well acted, and even well animated for Invincible standards. Although, even though this is the biggest episode of Season 3 and is nearly perfect on its own, there is one big problem that I've had throughout the entire season so far, and that problem is where is Omni-Man and Alan? I know the show is called Invincible, but still, these are two of the best characters in the entire show, and we haven't seen them in forever. I loved this episode, but I will admit, the whole time I was waiting for Omni-Man and Alan to show up, even if it was just in the end credits or whatever. But we never got it. And now I'm just mentally preparing to see them for like 2 seconds in the next episode and then have to wait another year to see them in season 4. But this video isn't about how much I want to see those two, even though I do really want to see them. It's about how awesome this episode was, so let's just get straight into that. Well, later, because first I want to talk about some of my critiques for this episode before praising everything that it did right and everything that was so great about it. First, there were definitely some weird or I guess melodramatic moments in this episode that definitely took me out of it a little. The worst one is when the immortal is revived again and then he talks about starting a family with Kate. This whole scene was just so awkward to me and so over exaggerated, and I don't really think we needed all that in order to learn that those two are retiring from the Guardians. Sure, maybe they just wanted a kind of sweet send-off for those two because they are or were pretty significant characters, but this is just not it. Second, and I'm well aware that some people might not be happy with me saying this, but the way that Rex's death was handled was not my favorite. The sad little montage after he, blows up with the Billie Eilish song and everything, it tries too hard to be emotional and it just ends up being melodramatic and it did not hit for me. Hopefully when or if they do a more proper funeral for him or something like that, it'll be done better. The fight where he died though, and how he actually, blew himself up and all, that was pretty cool. Third, I want to talk about Eve in this episode because she does get bodied pretty early on, and to be honest, it was just all plot. Just incompetent writing. Arguably, the most powerful character realistically in the entire show, and she doesn't do much at all during the whole Invincible War. She fights like a buffoon, using her dumb little pink glass walls against Viltrumites, causing her to be hospitalized for the rest of the episode because of plot. And I don't know if this is true, I just read it somewhere, but she might be in a coma from this, and they make it a super important part of the story from now on that she is in a coma? Like, are you serious? They couldn't have put a bit more effort into how that actually went down? Anyway, I'm not that upset about it, I don't even care. It's like, not at all, I don't care at all, it's whatever. But fourth and finally, I want to bring up Omni-Man and Alan again. For some reason, these two have been missing for like weeks now, and who knows how much of them we'll actually see in episode 8. I'm guessing we'll have to wait until season 4 to get the Invincible Omni-Man reunion, although I have not read the comics and I don't plan to, so maybe he'll show up next week, hopefully. Anyway, if you've seen my previous Invincible videos, you know that my biggest issue with the season so far is how they are not progressing the overarching plot about defending the Earth and fighting back against the Viltrum Empire. In season 2, it seemed pretty clear the direction the show was going in, with Alan and Thetis and Omni-Man becoming a good guy and everything, and I'm not quite sure why they haven't gone in that direction, since it would involve more characters, it would have much higher stakes, and it would just be a more interesting and exhilarating story. I guess it's just because they have to follow the comics, but it's still unfortunate. Anyway, that's enough criticism of the episode. Let's get into why it was so great. Starting with the animation of all things, this is one of the best looking episodes in all of Invincible, and I really hope they keep it up for the last episode of the season. Well, I hope they keep it up for the rest of the show's entire span, but I can't get too greedy. Anyway, the animators and studios understood the assignment for this episode, and they knew they could not keep cheaping out on an episode of this caliber from an action perspective. They seemed to embrace the fact that this episode would need a lot more work than most episodes, and they actually put in that work instead of continuing the often bland animation of the show. It's not all perfect, and it would still be really nice if they had the show looking more like the teasers, but I'm grateful for what we got. Most of the action scenes look really good, and there are a lot of action scenes. There are also just some shots that will go down as all-time great shots in Invincible, and I'm mostly talking about this one. This one is actually, this shot is such a banger. Next, I want to talk about Mark, because he is actually really great in this episode. Not that he stinks in every other episode, but in this episode, we get peak writing for Mark as we see how he's developed all season, both maturity-wise and strength-wise. He's more mature and based in this episode than in any other episode of Invincible besides maybe the end of season 1, and he finally fights like he actually did go through all that training at the beginning of the season, and and he doesn't get bodied in this episode like he does in every other episode. He actually does a good amount of bodying, which is super nice to see. His fight with Angstrom Levy was particularly good, and I like that one the most, although once it got to him just getting pummeled by the drones, it got a lot less cool. We saw him doing nearly the same thing last episode against Powerplex's Lightning, and I wish they would have made this whole fight really good and not just the beginning when Mark is dodging all the portals and stuff. Also, Mark finally being okay with taking Angstrom Levy's life was really nice to see. I wish he was actually able to do it instead of letting him get away, but it was still nice. On another note about Mark, but not Mark, all the Invincible variants are really cool and unique, and Steven Yeun voicing all these guys proves himself as kind of by far Invincible's best voice actor, if he wasn't already. One of the only voice actors that could challenge Steven Yeun is J.K. Simmons as Omni-Man, but oh wait, we've barely seen him this season. But, you know, it's fine. I'm not even mad about it. Cecil finally returns in this episode, and for more than one scene, like he got in episode 4. He and Mark don't really make up for their beef early in the season, but they still get along and work together when they need to, which is satisfying to see. Also, Donald was a bit of a surprise in this episode, and I really like what they're doing with him, even if he's still a fairly minor character. Also, I want to quickly mention that the Jonathan Banks casting as Britt, this side character guy, that was pretty disappointing. Hopefully he plays a bigger role later though, because I would gladly eat my words on that. Mike and Jesse though, they do get their reunion. Now I'll talk about the Guardians and Teen Team a bit, even if they weren't shown for that long. Other than Immortal and Kate, I thought their scenes were well done, and I liked finally seeing Bulletproof do something, even if he didn't do much. I'm mostly just glad that we got to see them in action at all, both at Guardians HQ and Teen Team HQ. The elephant in the room though is obviously Rex. I don't think they gave his character justice in this episode, but they could be saving that for later. And by later, I mean next episode, because it would be silly to wait until next season for that. If they don't do anything for him though, that wouldn't be a huge deal for me, especially since his role in the show has mostly just declined ever since season 1. Powerplex also returns in a very minor role, but we actually see him helping people out and kind of being a superhero, which is cool. It doesn't really matter though, because he still hates Invincible and he's still going to prison. I could honestly take him or leave him in this episode because, and maybe this is just me, but when he was on screen, it kind of took me out of the current episode, you know? It's not at all a bad decision to include him in this episode, but I guess because last episode was so good as a side story and because Aaron Paul is clearly so into the role, it just felt a bit off for me. But it doesn't detract from the episode, not at all. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but whatever. It's my video. Let's talk about Oliver though, who's becoming more and more likable throughout the season. He has a somewhat minor role in this episode, but, and I'm actually surprised to be saying this after what I said in my first Invincible video, I'm glad we saw him. He's mostly just there to help out, but I loved when he started to tell Mark that Angstrom needs to go. And Mark listened to him. The kid is just getting more and more based, and I'm all for it. I was skeptical at first, but not anymore. Although I'll admit, I have seen a little bit of a spoiler about what happens to him later in the story, so I am being careful. In conclusion, this is one of the best episodes of Invincible, period, and if the next episode sticks the landing, season 1 might have some real competition for the best season so far. They would have to really stick the landing, and it would have to be easily the best episode of Invincible so far, but it is possible. I may have some issues with this season as a whole, but I cannot deny that everything in this episode, from the acting to the animation to the writing, is peak Invincible. Everybody working on Invincible, the animators, the actors, the producers, whoever, they locked in for this episode and it turned out awesome. Hopefully I'll be saying the same thing for next week's episode, where we better finally see Omni-Man and Alan once again and not just in some short end credit scene. Anyway, that's all I got for this video. Please let me know what you thought of the episode in the comments, and feel free to flame me if you disagree with anything I said, and I say this in every video now, but thank you so much for the recent support on the channel and on the recent Invincible videos. I really do love doing this, so your support means a lot. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please consider dropping a like and a sub, and until next time.